Hi, fans of high quality entertainment. So recently, my buddy Glenn Kellaway from the basement did his, it was top 13 American bands. And his number one favorite was The Grateful Dead. I know. Anyway, I thought I would do a top 12 list, not 13, because I don't like copying Glenn Kellaway from the basement. He gets angry. And had a little discussion. We went to Kingston, Ontario today. He picked up some new speakers, and we were talking about the video he did, and then he was asking about mine, and he was guessing some of what would be in my top 12, and he got some of them right. And anyway, he was really surprised at my number one choice. Seriously. So here we go. Now, first off, remember, please, this is my favorites. You can have your favorites. And I also can't list every American band in this video. So there's no talk about Boston or Journey or some of those other bands that I'm really not a fan of. If you're a fan of them, that's great. So some bands that most of these I like, and some of them aren't on the list. I'll explain when I talk about them. But there's a few here. Yeah. Canned Heat, I love them. I have all of their early albums. Talking Heads, they almost made my list. Captain Beefheart of the Magic Band. I don't know. Even though it says band on a lot of their albums, I still consider Captain Beefheart a solo artist. I might be wrong, but that's my choice. Ramones, love early Ramones. Devo, I love early Devo. The Residents, I have, I think, about 6 of their CDs. I love them. Three Dog Night, I think, are a very underrated American band. And yes, they were a band. They didn't have, a real band. There were 7 members, 3 were singers, and the rest was a band, and they played on their albums. And I do realize they sing a lot of cover versions, but when they did that, the cover versions they were covering weren't popular until they recorded them and made them their own. And it's ridiculous that bands like Three Dog Night are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I love ZZ Top. They could have almost made my list. Once again, Frank Zappa and the Mothers, I just, consider Frank Zappa as a solo artist. So, Aerosmith, I just like some of the early Aerosmith. Kiss, I'm not really a fan of, except for their debut album and maybe 2 or 3 other songs. Metallica, I respect them, but not a big fan. REM I like, but they did make my list. Steely Dan, I'm not a fan of. Not that I dislike them. Jefferson Airplane, I love the 60s Jefferson Airplane. Foo Fighters, I respect, but never have bought any of their albums. Tom Petty, once again, even though it's Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, they wouldn't make my list anyway, even though I totally love, everything I've heard by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. But I just like other bands more. Heart, never been a fan of. Early Chicago's great. I like the debut album by Boston. That's about it. The Cars are good, but they wouldn't make my list of, top 12. Styx, I don't mind some early Styx albums. REO Speedwagon, no thank you. Motley Crue, no. Guns N' Roses, no. Cheap Trick, I love early Cheap Trick. I see I have Jefferson Airplane there. No, I don't. Do I? Yeah, I have them there twice. And Nirvana. I mean, I like the first 2, well, the 2 albums that I've heard. But I'm not a huge fan of Nirvana. So here is my top 12. So number 12, this seriously took me a while. I think every year it changes a little bit. But number 12, I've got to go with Alice Cooper, the band. I know later, when they did start, it was Alice Cooper, the band. And then, of course, later on, Alice Cooper took it for his solo name also. But just for the band era, I love, even their early albums like Easy Action. And then Killer, of course, School's Out, Billion Dollar Babies. Just and of course, their, the shock rock and their great live shows back in the day. So they are my number 12. Number 11. Talking Heads. Did I have them on that list? I did. Yeah, I made that list and then, I worked on it a bit and I did decide to include them because they were such a great live band, and Fear of Music would be at least in my top 50 albums of all time, but probably maybe even in the top 30. And I just love all of their early albums. Yeah, and they're just very original. So they're number 11. Number 10. Now, this would not have been in my list if I did this, like a year ago. Sly and the Family Stone. And the thing is, I've loved their music since their greatest hits album came out, I believe in 1970, 71. And I've got this compilation. All I have by them is their album Life and a 2 CD compilation that covers, a lot of their years. And I was playing it again last night, and even the later songs are so good and so ahead of their time. Just so many great songs to list. Everyday People, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again, Dance to the Music, Want to Take You Higher. Yeah, just so many great songs. So they are number 10. Number 9. The Doors. Yeah, I've got all of the Doors studio albums. I even really like at least the first album without Jim Morrison, Other Voices. And I think all of their studio albums with Jim Morrison are just almost perfect albums. And when I do a ranking of the Doors albums, it's usually pretty difficult. I know a lot of people would put The Soft Parade at the bottom, but I've loved that album ever since it came out. So they're number 9. Number 8. Creedence Clearwater Revival. Yeah. One of my all-time favorite, well, 2 of my all-time favorite songs are Keep on Chooglin' and Ramble Tamble. And then, of course, there's Cosmo's Factory and all of their great albums. Their last one, Mardi Gras, was good, but it wasn't great, of course. But it still had some great songs like Sweet Hitchhiker and Someday Never Comes. And John Fogerty, I never really followed his solo career, but for back then, Creedence was one of the best. Number 7. Glenn's favorite band. Yeah, Velvet Underground. The only thing about them, they would be higher if they had released more albums. And I usually don't include Squeeze, the 5th album, because that was basically a Doug Huell solo album. I have yet to to hear it, actually. But their first four albums, I love equally, almost equally. And of course, I'm a huge fan of Lou Reed also in his solo career. So yeah, they had to be in my top 12 for sure. Number 6. Oh, it's a joke. Kind of a joke. That's Grand Funk Railroad today. But no. Back in the day, though, there's the boys with Don Brewer and his awesome afro. Yeah, I've always loved early Grand Funk. Once they got more poppy, I didn't like that quite as much. I loved We're an American Band, but then with Shining On and later albums, I did lose interest. But their first few albums and the live album, I love. And of course, I got to interview Mark Farner just over a year ago, which was awesome. And Grant Arthur from Grant's Rock Warehouse is interviewing Mark Farner. I believe it's November 4th. So stay tuned for that. Number 5. Who is that? I know, a lot of you are asking. That is Ween. And the thing is, I only have heard 3 of their albums. I have The Pod, Pure Guava, and Quebec. I love all 3 albums. I think, some of their songs are so crazy and bizarre, experimental, but at the end of the day, they are supremely talented. And once I do have the Mollusk on order from a local record store, but like I said, once I've heard more of their albums, they might even be higher in this list. And I don't like going to Spotify to listen to those albums I haven't heard. I want to buy the CD and then listen to it for the first time. But yeah, Ween, I don't know why I ignored them all these years, but I love them. Number 4. The Monkees. That's right. I was listening to, I've got all of their early albums on CD, and I've got this 2 CD compilation. And usually with greatest hits compilations, if it's 2 CDs, the second CD is, not as good as the first one. But the second CD of the Monkees, all of their deep cuts and great hits. Just so many. And yes, I realize they didn't play on some of their, especially their first 2 albums, except for Mike Nesmith a bit. But on the third one, Headquarters, they played on it. And they wrote some of their, they wrote songs too. They're all talented. A song is a song. They recorded a lot of great songs. So they are number 4. Number 3. Blue Oyster Cult. That's right. Once again, I've got everything by them. And I think they were, some albums are, of course, better than others, but I don't think there's any bad albums that they made. And they were pretty consistent overall. And even their last studio album was awesome. I was really surprised by it. And they're a great live band, and they're still, some of the original members, Buck Dharma and Eric Bloom, they're still on tour. And I think I've said this so many times, but Buck Dharma, the guy in the far right at the front, is one of the most underrated guitarists ever. Just a great band. Here we go. Number 2. That's right. Number 2, Sparks. I know. A lot of you are probably thinking I'd have them at number 1, but you're wrong. But it doesn't matter. I love Sparks. I've been a fan for 50 years. And it doesn't matter if they're 1 or 2 or even 8. I've loved, I would say 90% of what they do I absolutely love all through the years. The other maybe 5% I think is good, and maybe not even 5% of it is bad. Maybe not even 1%. And I saw them on tour the last 2 years with Molly, and they're in their 70s and they still got the energy. Russell can still hit those high notes. And they will always be in my heart, even if they're not number 1. This really surprised Glenn today when I told him that ahead of Sparks were the friggin' Beach Boys. That's right, I said it. The friggin' Beach Boys. I've always really liked the Beach Boys. You know, Pet Sounds, I liked all of their hit songs. But in the last few months, I've been doing a deep dive and buying a lot of their albums I never heard. Sunflower, Surf's Up, Friends, Wild Honey. And each one of them I just absolutely love. Yes, they made some clunkers later on, like Summer in Paradise. But I think, and I also have been buying some Brian Wilson solo stuff. And I just think, and Pet Sounds, like I said, I always really liked that album, but a few months back it finally clicked with me like it does with some other people. And I think it's one of the greatest albums ever. And yeah, there's always going to be people out there that, kind of, joke about them and, the surf songs. But they've never really listened to a song like Feel Flows, which is just amazing. And, as much as Brian Wilson is truly a musical genius, his brothers were so talented, great vocals. Even Mike Love, you got to give him some credit for, some of his vocals, of course. Al Jardine, all of them. They took more chances than I thought they did, when you listen to these albums. And they did some experimental stuff, and it was it's all interesting to me. Yeah, there's albums with a clunker song or two sometimes. But overall, right now, and I think it's going to be for forever, the Beach Boys are number 1. And I think even Sparks would agree with that. They even did a kind of a parody of a Beach Boys kind of a song with Over the Summer on introducing Sparks. So obviously they are fans too. And there's even, if I remember, I might not, but there's a picture of Brian Wilson with Ron and Russell Mael. They're watching I guess they were his documentary and the Sparks documentary, and they were watching it together. So, yeah. So that's it. The Beach Boys are number 1. Who are your favorite American bands? Let me know in the comments section below. Bye.